Yo, 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 yo. What's up, all you burners, stoners, and potheads out there? This is Weedman 420 with the Weedman 420 Chronicles. How are all you vipers doing out there? Mrs. Weedman.
Mr. Weedman.
How the hell are you?
Excellent.
Love it, love it. Hey, everybody out in the world. It is freaking cold in Chicago right now.
Oof.
As I'm looking at my computer, 18 degrees fucking cold. Brr. Felt it today when I went outside.
It was cold.
And I ran back in like a little kid.
Like a little baby.
Brr, brr.
I'm so cold.
It was cold.
There should be about 2 feet of snow on the ground because then it makes cold bearable.
Oh, my goodness.
Yikes.
Yeah, it is cold out. Winter is here. As they said in some show, winter is coming.
I think it's here.
No, it is here. It is here. Well, Mrs. Weedman, you built a great little that I posted today. Little
Gingerbread camper.
Yes, that was pretty cool.
I did.
You did a great job on it.
It was fun.
Yeah, nice job. Nice pictures. Little.
I got my crafty on.
You did get your crafty
I was happy.
on. Little clay Weedman and little clay Mrs. Weedman enjoyed the candy.
Our birds were trying to eat it too.
Yeah, they were.
It was not edible. There was no cannabis involved.
No.
It was just a decoration.
It was very pretty. I liked it.
It
I
was
enjoyed it. We smoking?
Yeah.
Smoke?
I'm smoking. What am I smoking?
We're smoking the home grow. I think that's the last of the berry white, which tastes great still. It's very, very mellow though. Very mellow. So we'll see how this show goes on the mellowness. So
Wait, you grew berry white?
yes.
Your first grow, second grow.
First.
Berry white is a kush.
Kind of. Kind of. It's
Kind of?
berry. It's a blueberry strain and white widow.
Blueberry kush?
Yes,
Oh, then how is it such a downer?
because it is. Kush strains are an indica.
Why do they make me not feel down?
They are. I mean, just it could be the white widow in there too. I don't know. It makes me feel like I want to go to sleep.
Oh, I feel like kush strains give me like the giggles and they're funny.
They do. They are. Then
Yeah.
that one is too. But I don't know.
Oh, now I'm confused. And it's not because of the weed.
No. Well,
Well, it's because of the weed, but not because of the weed I smoked.
Very
Just
true.
weed. There's so much to know.
so much to learn. Well, I'm going to smoke, and you're going to start off with the ABCs 1, 2, 3s.
Of cannabis and
Yeah.
THC.
Yes.
So I've got an article here on cannabis use for older adults. And so I opened that by saying, well, am I older? But they are talking about maybe people beyond the age of 60? I don't know. Let's see. So
We have a long way to go before we get to 60, so
not that long. Time flies, man.
when you're having fun.
So, more older, I put it in quotes, Americans are trying cannabis to alleviate chronic conditions. So, we'd like to clear up some of the confusion. When older adults seek guidance about using cannabis for medical purposes, they will find lots of information online, much of it contradictory, confusing, and just plain wrong. And it may be difficult to find a medical professional to offer useful advice. It's the wild, wild west out there, says Dr. Peter Grinspoon, a primary care physician and medical cannabis specialist in Boston. Those who want to use medical cannabis safely need to be their own sheriff. Cannabis use is criminal at the federal level, but a 2014 law prohibits the Justice Department from interfering with the implementation of state medical cannabis laws. Currently, medical cannabis is legal in 36 states, the District of Columbia, and 4 U.S. territories. The medicinal value of cannabis is increasingly recognized, but research into the drug's properties was taboo for decades, so scientific evidence and its benefits and risks is still limited. Therefore, many clinicians do not feel comfortable recommending cannabis to treat chronic conditions, or do not know how to give medical advice related to its use, says Dr. Benjamin Hahn, a geriatrician, addiction medicine physician, and clinician researcher at the University of California, San Diego. Where does one turn for advice on medical cannabis? Well, some states have tools to find registered practitioners who are comfortable recommending medical cannabis, Hahn says. In some states, physicians certify patients to receive state-issued medical cannabis cards via brief online appointments. However, it's unlikely they'll be familiar with your medical history, diagnoses, and prescriptions, so the doctor may not be a good source of information for your particular situation. Some dispensaries have pharmacists on duty, but that's not always the case, and the bud tenders or salespeople in general are not required to have medical training. Someone at a dispensary may say, "My cousin took something like this for a migraine, so why don't you give it a try for your headache?" Grinspoon says. They are not supposed to be giving medical advice. Despite the challenge of finding reliable information, many older adults are turning to medical cannabis to relieve troublesome health symptoms. A survey of 568 patients aged 65 and older, 65 and older, at a geriatrics clinic in San Diego found that 15% had used cannabis within the past 3 years. The vast majority used it for medical purposes only. Nearly 3/4 of those in the study who used medical cannabis were treating pain, such as arthritis, while a smaller percentage took it to help with sleep and anxiety, says co-author Christopher N. Kaufman, assistant professor in the Division of Epidemiology and Data Science at University of Florida. Grinspoon, on staff at Massachusetts General Hospital, recommends cannabis for a wide range of conditions that cause those symptoms. That covers a lot of things, including PTSD, colitis, abdominal pains, fibromyalgia, and many others, he says. A lot of it comes down to the fact that as people get older and often a little portlier, they get achy backs and joints, and they need something for chronic pain and for sleep. In the geriatrics clinic survey, more than 75% of patients who used cannabis reported that it was somewhat or extremely helpful in managing any of these conditions, according to the study published in the Journal of American Geriatric Society. Meanwhile, the perceived risk of regular cannabis use is decreasing among older people. As cannabis continues to be legalized throughout the country, it should be a major priority to provide balanced, consistent, evidence-based information for patients, Hahn says. Hahn and Grinspoon offer this advice for people wanting to try medical cannabis. Talk to your doctor. The people responding to the California survey were patients at a geriatrics clinic, so they obviously have a relationship with a physician. Yet fewer than half of those using cannabis reported discussing it with their regular healthcare providers, and that can be dangerous. It's important to inform your clinician about your interest in or use of cannabis so that if they are not knowledgeable about cannabis use, they can carefully monitor your chronic diseases and prescription medications to ensure cannabis is not exacerbating existing chronic diseases or interacting with medications, Hahn says. Go slow to find the right dose. Figure out cannabis doses that will treat your symptoms without unwanted side effects. It'll take time, but go low, go slow. We all know that, right?
Yep.
If you start with a very low dose and work your way up very slowly, it's hard to get in trouble, Grinspoon says. But do it when you don't have to drive, you don't have any child care responsibilities, and you don't have to work. Cannabis may affect you differently depending on how you use it. Smoking or putting drops of tincture under your tongue will affect you more quickly than eating a gummy. Edible cannabis products can take a while to have an effect in the body, so it's important to be patient when using it this way, Hahn says. Grinspoon recommends that new users start with a single drop of cannabis tincture, increasing the dose drop by drop every day. You're just going to have to slowly get yourself to a dose that gives you symptom relief, he says. In many cases, Grinspoon considers cannabis to have less dangerous side effects than common pain treatments such as opioids and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin and ibuprofen. Likewise, he often prefers to recommend cannabis rather than the sedatives commonly prescribed as sleep aids. But all drugs have potential dangers. Among other things, cannabis can worsen psychotic disorders, cause cardiac and breathing problems, and temporarily worsen short-term memory. There is a potential for overdosing, not a fatal overdose, but just a bad experience, Grinspoon says. It's a safer alternative for a lot of people, but it's not for everybody, he said. It's important to have an accurate understanding of the harms. Before I recommend medical cannabis to someone, I ask, is this less harmful than whatever else we would be using? And I think that's the most important question. So it's kind of cool to hear medical practitioners supporting it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've yet to come across anyone who agrees with it. And part of my hesitation to telling a physician that I use cannabis is it's then on your medical file, and I don't want to lose my health insurance because
Right.
I don't know how insurance carriers are looking at it yet. And so it's always more of like a fear thing. Like, I don't care if my doctor judges me, whatever, I can handle that. But I don't want my health insurance to cancel me.
Right.
So
Yeah, it's kind of scary.
So
Kind of
anyway,
that gray area.
it is. I
Yeah.
think so.
Almost as gray as that sweater you got on right now, looking good. I like
I've
it.
got a big wool sweater on, and I'm warm and cozy.
When I started growing my own cannabis, I didn't know what to do with all the extra leaves, sugar leaf. So remember, I started juicing it, and so I did some research on it, and it was totally fine that you can do it. And there is some health benefits from juicing your cannabis. And so this article talks about raw cannabis won't get you stoned, but does have some interesting benefits. Raw cannabis doesn't have THC, but it can be consumed for some extra benefits. Here are some examples. Amateur cannabis users likely don't know the inner workings of cannabis. They don't know that a key element for a high experience is heat, which transforms the compound from THCA into THC, which is why someone might try to add raw cannabis to their sweets and expect some sort of benefit. While this doesn't work, raw cannabis does have some interesting health benefits. In recent years, people have taken an interest in other parts of the cannabis plant, removing THC from their focus. There are a variety of elements present in the plant that have benefits, at times mysterious, since they haven't been all that studied. These compounds and terpenes are plentiful and vast different to a point where researchers don't even know how many there are and what other effects are in full. While consuming raw cannabis won't get you high and won't be the most delicious experience, it's something akin to eating leafy greens. While the plant won't produce the psychoactive effects, it might help providing vitamins, minerals, and cannabinoids into your system. For the THC in the cannabis plant to become effective, providing the high and the sensation of relaxation or creativity, the plant needs to go through decarboxylation process, which we've talked about. This is a step many cannabis chefs skip before cooking edibles. Decarboxylation occurs when you apply heat to the plant, be that when smoking a joint or when preheating cannabis before adding it to your edibles. We just made Canna sugar over the weekend, and I also made Canna butter over the weekend, ghee and coconut oil mixed. I decarbed my cannabis at 240 for about 35 minutes. So you have to do that if you want that THC content to turn the THCA to THC. Also, if you cook the cannabis for too long, you decarb it for too long, you can turn some of the cannabinoids into CBN, which is a great cannabinoid, but it's very good for sleep aid. It is very mellow, very low. It also happens when your cannabis gets older. CBN kind of goes into there. I made a mistake a long time ago that when I first started reading about making edibles, that it also takes the CBD out. That's not true. I do apologize for that if anybody thought that. That was my mistake after doing more research and reading over the years. But there is CBDA that does turn into CBD, so know that also. So, and don't forget the A stands for acid. In its natural state, cannabis doesn't have any THC. Instead, it has a compound called THCA, which has been linked with anti-inflammatory properties. The promotion of brain health, the propagation of cells, and even slowing down the growth and the spread of cancer cells. Still, no matter how invested you are in cannabis research, there's no scientific evidence out there that guarantees that consuming the raw plant will provide the anti-inflammatory properties and other benefits it's been linked to. However, by eating cannabis raw, you'd get the same benefits of eating any other green and leafy plant. If you're interested in eating cannabis and are finding it challenging, there are some options you can try. While some are interested in adding it to salads or garnishes in their dishes, juicing might be the simple way, and that's what I've done. I've juiced my cannabis leaves. I've juiced the stems sometimes. I've added in there, but mostly the leaves. I've never done buds.
No.
I might have done some shake it that might have fell in with the leaves, so that could have possibly been happening, but I've never done raw cannabis buds. This process takes advantage of the entire cannabis plant, including the leaves, stems, and buds. It makes for a much better option than somehow finding a way to make raw cannabis taste good. Cannabis juices contain all the compounds and properties in the plant and can be molded according to your taste. You can mix it with other fruits and veggies and some honey for sweetness and end up with something healthy and delicious. So hopefully that kind of helps you if you are thinking about it. If you are a home grower and you have all this excess stuff and you don't know what to do with it, try it. I liked it.
It's beautiful. It's like all of the pretty part of the plant that you don't typically use. So
yes.
I mean, even if you get trace like minerals or vitamins from it, it's still... At least it's not going to waste.
Yeah, and mixed it in a smoothie. You didn't even really taste the because I tried it. Like, what is that, wheat germ or the wheatgrass that you get wheatgrass you get a shot of?
Right.
I tried just doing a shot of the cannabis juice, and it was a little bitter. Too bitter for me. If you watched The Great American Baking Show, it's one of my favorite words. Paul says it's bitter. So yes, it's very bitter. So mix it in a smoothie. I thought it was great. If you like the taste of it with the leaves, cut it up and chop it and throw it in your salad with a little dressing. You might like it mixed with some other vegetables and other leafy greens. So try it. See what you think. The navel. The navel doesn't get talked about at all. No one goes and looks and goes, that person's got a nice navel or a nice belly button. You ever hear that? No, not at all. Never heard it. Like I don't even...
a belly button ring.
Yeah, but no one goes.
So I guess some women are drawing attention to their navel.
Right.
Some girls have like cute little belly buttons.
Yeah, but no one ever says, "Go, damn, she's got a cute belly button," or "Damn, he's got a nice looking belly button."
When someone's little, like at the pool, you're like, "Oh, look at their cute little belly button," because they got their like puffed out bellies.
That's
little
different.
like 2-year-olds.
Well, we did some reading, and what are they talking about with the navel?
This is really interesting. So, cannabis oil in your navel for medicinal purposes. It's called the Pachoti intake method. At the end of the umbilical cord is the chest glandula that remains after birth. Every human being has a chest gland. It's connected to more than 72,000 nerves that run around the body to various organs and tissues. By applying cannabis oil to the navel and using the Pachoti administration method, cannabinoids have the ability to reach every part of your body. This is something no other cannabis delivery method can provide.
That's crazy.
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 Right?
Crazy. I mean, now I want to try it.
I don't know. I don't know that it's... I don't know. I mean...
I want to try it so bad.
Decades of prohibition have buried this plant and the traditional methods of consumption, such as the delivery by Pachoti. We continue to find new ways to ingest the plant. There's edibles, topicals, vaping, bongs, sodas, smoking, sublinguals, to name a few. Maybe it's the creative powers of cannabis in action. While the Pachoti method has gained attention online recently, it is far from new. It is unclear the exact date on which the Pachoti method was created, but we know it was used in Ayurvedic traditions, an ancient Indian medical system known as one of the oldest healthcare systems. So what is this method, and how does it work, and who should use it? The method of Pachoti, or Nabi Chikitsa, in the Ayurvedic tradition refers to putting oil in the navel for medicinal purposes. Oils such as tea tree, eucalyptus are often used for their antibacterial and antiviral properties. Since cannabinoids are known to reduce nausea, fight inflammation, and destroy cancer cells, to name a few, it is natural that practitioners of Ayurvedic medicine turn to cannabis oil. And since it doesn't metabolize in the liver this way, it's not psychoactive. The administration system is named after the Pachoti gland, which is believed to be behind the belly button and continues to exist after cutting the umbilical cord. The intestines contain many cannabinoid receptors and determine central nervous system disorders. Therefore, when applying cannabis oil to the belly button, it is systemically absorbed throughout the body. In Ayurveda, this intake method is an integrated approach to endocrinology, both with cannabis and other herbs. The endocrine system and its hormones are the cause of many of the common diseases that affect human existence. You should use the most organic, cleanest oil extraction you can acquire to get the maximum efficiency, and it's noted that Rick Simpson oil works well too. So who can benefit from it? The Pachoti method is similar to cannabis prescriptions because because it is systemically absorbed by the entire system instead of focusing on one spot, and you benefit without psychoactive effects. It's an option for children or those who don't react well or can't ingest cannabis, such as a pregnant woman battling morning nausea or a cancer patient experiencing nausea and vomiting. However, anyone can put cannabis oil in their belly button and give it a try. People who have central nervous system disorders, neurological disorders, endocrine system attacks, or gastrointestinal problems, all of which are associated with chronic diseases, can benefit from Pachoti Method. Herbalists, naturopathians, ayurvedic methods, and other traditional practitioners have trusted this method of taking herbs through the test of time. We need more research to fully understand its benefits, but it won't hurt if you relax with a little cannabis oil in your belly button. It's worth a try. So the photo that headed this article showed like a woman's stomach. Obviously, she's laying down, and then her stomach is filled with oil. So maybe you can do a little research. I don't know if it's something that you're supposed to see a practitioner for, or if it's something that you could do yourself at home.
I'm going to get some tincture and try
just
it.
pour it in there and give it a try.
Yeah, just don't roll over.
You're gonna
one
ruin your
day
sheets.
you're going to go to the doctor, and the doctor's going to go, take 2 drips and put it in your belly button and call me in the morning.
Yeah, right. Take 2 drips, eat a gummy bear, and
Yeah.
tell me how you're doing.
Oh, man. Illinois November sales, in-state sales were up just a few $100, but 81,722,303. But out-of-state sales was down for the first time in about 5 months at 39 million. But also they did for the 5th straight month over $120 million.
Jeez.
Illinois, woo-hoo! Look at you selling all that cannabis. All right. Last episode I talked about potential fentanyl being in cannabis and people dying in Connecticut, Vermont, Rhode Island from
Black market cannabis.
Black market cannabis, yes. And so I did a little more research and some investigating here, and so this has been going on. The first article I caught was in my research was back in 2017. They mentioned fentanyl in illicit cannabis. But also, I wanted to see, can you smoke cannabis? Because I don't know much about fentanyl except for everything you read about it's being mixed and laced and people are dying from it. It's 300 times stronger than morphine and just craziness.
You mean can people smoke fentanyl?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, fentanyl. Okay. Sorry about that. So I went on and I did some research. You can smoke fentanyl. I had no idea that you could. I mean, I know people smoke heroin and I know people smoke cocaine, but I didn't know you could smoke fentanyl. You can, and a lot of people on the West Coast and the Bay Area are switching more to smoking it versus shooting it because of the factor of getting diseases from the needles and using bad needles and all that kind of stuff. So they're smoking it more now than ever. So that's the first thing I researched because I didn't know. The second thing was there was an
But that's fentanyl alone, right?
That's fentanyl alone. Yes,
Okay.
yes. So just to be clear, that's fentanyl alone. They're smoking it more than shooting it in the Bay Area. So what I did also find out that there was an article I read on the 4th of December. Now, potential emerging health threat. Officials warn of fentanyl-laced cannabis possibly in Michigan. Possibly. So they were talking about some people were dying from it, possibly. They're still doing laboratory effects from it. But just so you know that now it's Michigan. Also read that it happened in Ohio a few years back. Now we see that it's Michigan, Connecticut, Vermont, Rhode Island, and probably some other states they haven't mentioned yet. But then I found another article on the 5th of December. Monica Donovan, weed dealers don't put fentanyl in cannabis. My first question was, how does she know? And then she brought up some good points in this article saying that it would ruin their reputation as being a dealer to their customers, and why would they want to kill off their customers? And I get that. And then also in this article that she was talking about, they debunked it on Snopes and addressed it by a large number news advocacy organizations, including High Times, Forbes, and Filter Mag. Okay. So her talking about this, that they're not doing it, She put also in here, this careless approach contributes to misinformation about cannabis and setbacks our efforts to educate the general public who may not have a much understanding about the complexities and nuances of relationships between law enforcement, the war on drugs, and consequences for Vermonters. But also saying that she believes that law enforcement saying this to kind of hurt the reputation of cannabis and trying to put scare tactics out there. So I can agree with her on some of these things, but after I did some more reading, after I read her article, I went and did some more reading. And here is one. Are dealers circulating fentanyl disguised as cannabis? The short answer is no. And this was from out of Cincinnati, but they were talking about Utah finding it also, and in Cincinnati wrote about it, and it was a viral article published by the Utah news station claims drug traffickers have begun to circulate deadly drugs such as fentanyl, a potent opioid discussed as far less harmful and occasionally legal cannabis. This is really happening. Now, saying not in Cincinnati area, according to multiple health agencies, addiction centers, and anti-drug law enforcement officials. The Utah station that originally published the article noted that no Utah law enforcement agency had yet noted a genuine case and doesn't believe it's a good idea to chase a trend based on rumors. So then I went and I dig a little deeper. Then 3 arrested in connection with fentanyl-laced cannabis on December 2nd. And this was by the Associated Press
of 2021.
Brattleboro police say 3 people have been arrested in connection with cannabis laced with a powerful opioid fentanyl. Brattleboro, Vermont. 3 people have been arrested in Brattleboro in connection with cannabis laced with powerful opioid fentanyl, police said. Now, this is going back to what Monica Donovan said about the police throwing it out there and doing some scare tactics, but they have 3 arrested. Now, reading more and doing some more research was that they may not be adding it directly to the cannabis, but because dealers don't only just deal in cannabis, some might just only deal in cannabis, but some might deal in other illicit drugs like cocaine, like heroin, like methamphetamines and pills, and also fentanyl. And what they're saying is what could be happening, and this is just all these articles I've been reading, and I'm probably going to do some more research and talk about it again as I find more out, that it could be cross-contamination to where they might have their fentanyl out on the table, cutting it, whatever they're cutting it with, but also have the cannabis next to it that could be laid out on a scale. And actually, if they're most dealers probably don't have 4 or 5 different scales to weigh their different drugs out in the weight increments they need to sell. So who knows, there could be fentanyl on that scale that they're weighing, and then they put the weed on there and they're weighing it on there, and then they're putting their cocaine on there and weighing it, and all of a sudden you have a mixture of a fucking toxic cocktail. So I don't know what the whole truth is. I'm just trying to figure this out because I think it's important to know if police are saying that people are dying from fentanyl-laced cannabis, why is this happening? Because on the last episode, I was pissed off and I said a lot of curse words and was blaming the dealers on this. But I am blaming the dealers in some ways because they just are just trying to make money and they're throwing weed in their bag and they could be laced and they could have took a bad bag that had some old fentanyl in there or some other kind. You don't know. And that's what scares me about the illicit market. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. Okay, people sell weed and they've been selling it. That's how we've been getting it before legalization happened. But in the end, to a dealer, it's all about the money. So don't forget that. And that's why I truly believe that this country needs to let you be able to grow your own medicine. Because
it's not to say though that big corporation doesn't have the same end goal.
Oh,
just to earn money.
Yeah.
But there's regulators.
Right.
So someone's watching and they can't just be sloppy.
Their cannabis is being tested.
Right.
They go through like first party, second party, and sometimes third party testing. So their whole end game too is to make money, like Mrs. Weedman said. Let's not fool myself on that one. But in the end game, if someone's at their house and they're dealing in a lot of different illicit drugs, you don't know what's happening in that room. Mm-hmm. So just please be careful. So I don't know the whole truth. I'm going to keep on reading and keep on trying to let all you all know and myself know what the hell's going on with this. And hopefully some truth that will set us free comes out. But government, this is why we need to grow our own medicine. Top federal drug official says there's no evidence that occasional cannabis use is harmful for adults. Yay. The head of the nation's top federal drug research agency says that she's yet to see evidence that occasional cannabis use by adults is harmful. National Institute on Drug Abuse, the NIDA director Nora Volkwal, made the remarks in an interview with 538 that was published on last Tuesday. It's a notable admission given that the agency has historically gone to great lengths to highlight the potential risks of cannabis consumption. There is no evidence, to my knowledge, that occasional cannabis use has harmful effects. I don't know of any scientific evidence, that Volkwal said. I don't think it has been evaluated. We need to test it. So that's great stuff to hear about that. So occasional uses, good for you, good for me. Good for you, good for me. A state I like to go to and visit, Louisville, Kentucky. Kentucky lawmaker pre-files cannabis legalization bills for 2022 session. So she's getting a bunch of votes. She's trying to get it on. Let's do this. Representative Nima Klukrani, Democrat, has taken a dual-track approach to the reform, with one bill to have the legislature adopted the policy as a statutory measure and another to enact legalization through a constitutional amendment that would go before voters. Yay! And there's also some Republicans also on board with her also, so which is awesome. Go Kentucky, because when I come down there and visit, I just want to be able to buy some weed. California develops standardized cannabis testing in an attempt to clear up its inconsistencies. That's good. It's an attempt to deal with cannabis testing issues and laboratory consistencies. California is standardizing the process throughout the state's approximately 40 active weed testing facilities. Good for California. Standardize that shit. Let's make sure everyone's on the same page. Vermont Medical Society calls for 15% THC limit. I'm not too much of a fan of that. The Vermont Medical Society is calling for 15% THC limit on adult-use cannabis products, citing studies that suggest THC-rich cannabis is associated with the increase in emergency department psychiatric visits and mental health disorders, and including psychosis. The Vermont Medical Society last month adopted a resolution calling for a 15% THC limit on adult-use cannabis products in the state. The VMS board said the state has the nation's highest past month cannabis use, including use of high potency greater than 15% THC, and noted that the Vermont Department of Health said that last year that cannabis use is a significant public health problem in Vermont, and it's getting worse. I got a lot to say, but I'm going to read a little bit more. The resolution amends and replaces the board 2018 resolution, which opposed legalized cannabis for adults. The society represents 2,400 physicians and physician assistants throughout the state. The board cites several studies that suggest using cannabis with THC levels higher than 50% is associated with increased urgent emergency department psychiatric visits and increased mental health disorders, including psychosis. The resolution also points to one study published in 2019 that found that using high THC products is associated with increased urgent and emergency department non-psychiatric visits, including respiratory distress, often associated with overcrowding, utilization of emergency room facilities. The board is calling for cannabis packaging and advertising to include warnings about psychosis, impaired driving, addiction, suicide attempt, or controllable vomiting and harm to fetuses or nursing babies. Adult-use cannabis sales are expected to launch in Vermont in October of 2022. The state legalized it for adults in 2018 by reforms that did not include commercial sales. All right, so what I'm going to say about that, I've said that high THC content in flower is the big thing. Everybody wants the 35 to 37%. They all want it. They all think that's the reason why you get so high. What is Vermont doing to educate people when they go buy their cannabis? Is there any education? I'm not asking you, Mrs. Weedman.
Oh, I panicked. I'm like, am I supposed to know the answer?
This is just a question I'm saying out loud.
Like sitting over here.
Just for me to think and everybody to think. Here's what I have to say. Are they educating when you go to buy your cannabis? Are they especially if you're an early consumer, a newbie, or you've been only smoking for a few months, and you're not educated enough to know what THC content is? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the thing is, are dispensaries out there educating? You're a first timer, or how long have you been smoking? If you're just doing it on occasion, you don't need that 37% THC strain. Maybe you need this 20% THC strain, and maybe you don't want a sativa leaning strain that's going to make your heart rate go a little faster. You might feel like you're going to run laps. Education is key. folks, and I don't think Vermont is right on this. I think they need to investigate on how they're talking to people about cannabis and which ways are people learning. Are they just going in and buying, give me some sativa, give me that strain? Okay, the bud tender's probably just going to get him the strain and hand it to him because he probably thinks that customer knows what he's talking about. Education is key to learning what is good for you and your endocannabinoid system. So Vermont, I think you're wrong, first and foremost, to say 15% should be the max, because I know people that could smoke 37% and be just fine. That's what their body and endocannabinoid system needs. Now, I know people could probably smoke 10% and probably be just fine, but do a little more research, doctors out there. And I'm no doctor, and I'm not even an expert. I'm just saying, before you make claims, find out how you're educating your users.
Well, it's like they should do research on people who are daily or are like just seasoned cannabis users, because they're going to get the real data from people like that. Like if you asked me 12 years ago, how do you feel when you're on, when you consume cannabis, I would have had a much different answer than I do now, because I know more, I've used it longer, I use it more regularly, and I understand the effects, and I can now recognize different qualities of a different strain. I couldn't have told you that as, like a new daily smoker maybe 10 or 12 years ago. It's just different, and so when you're looking at it as just a political stance or a government control, FDA kind of coverage thing, it just comes back to, we just keep doing that same loop back to research.
Right.
But the research, I think, needs to be more practical. Like just start putting out surveys and questionnaires to consumers.
Education.
Yeah, because education.
If that board of doctors in Vermont would be smart, they would work with the dispensaries and the cultivators and come together and put together some kind of education program that you can read online and hand out pamphlets to your people who are buying cannabis.
The problem is that there isn't enough hard data that they could comfortably put up, because the news and the knowledge is changing all the time.
Right.
So that
but
pamphlet,
at least a pamphlet that has, okay, if you're a newbie consumer,
yes, basic,
don't smoke.
Start
Start asking questions to your bud tenders, going, I'm a new smoker, or I'm a moderate smoker. What strains would you recommend that are for somebody that just does it on occasion or does it every night to help them sleep and stuff like that? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't know. All I know is come together, doctors, and don't put a fucking a board up to block everything. Get together, community. Fight for that, because 15% is going to piss a lot of people off. Moving on. Minnesota, that we don't talk much about. Medical cannabis program won't cover anxiety disorders. That kind of sucks, but I'm sure people will fight for that. But what's cool about it, though, Minnesota, is that you're allowing edibles, because they don't sell raw flower that in Minnesota yet. But they're allowing edibles. Gummies and chews has been list of products approved that includes pills, vapor, oil, liquids, topicals, powdered mixtures, and oral dissolvable medicines like lozenges. And then also, registered medical cannabis patients will also be eligible in March for dried raw smokable cannabis, which was approved by the 2021 Minnesota legislature. Rulemaking for dried raw cannabis is also currently in process. So good for you, Minnesota.
That's great.
Now legalize it fully so people can enjoy themselves. Oklahoma, medical cannabis business demands steps to combat illicit grows. Some things they're trying to implement here is implementing a seed-to-sale tracking system, increasing inspections of licensed cannabis businesses, refining testing rules to ensure product safety, raising the price of a business license. I don't agree with all that, because I like what Oklahoma's doing, but I do agree that if illicit cannabis is going around like amok, they need to do something a little bit about it to help out the businesses that are spending money on having a storefront, employees, all that stuff. It keeps people having good jobs. So another new one I just read about 9 hours ago, Indiana GOP lawmaker plans medical cannabis bill as Democrats push for full recreational legalization. Good for you, Indiana. Its polls higher than any other issue they've seen in 38 other states set up and do the right thing for their citizens. We know it saves lives. We know it offers better quality of life. Democrats in Indiana have launched a campaign to legalize cannabis. There's some support from Republicans. And then this Representative Jim Lucas, Republican Seymour, said, I have a medical cannabis bill ready to go. He said the bill would be similar to the one that he introduced in the last session of the Indiana General Assembly, which would permit the use of medical cannabis by people with serious medical conditions as determined by a doctor, and would permit the cultivation, testing, and processing, transportation, and dispensing of medical cannabis by people who hold a valid permit issued by the state. It would also put the Indiana Department of Health in charge of implementing and enforcing the medical cannabis program. Indiana is one of just a handful of states that has not legalized medical cannabis. So, Indiana, let's do this, baby. Come on, you're losing tax dollars. But also, it's not even just about losing tax dollars. It's about letting your people in your state have the freedom to enjoy and to use it for medical purpose is of the greatest plant in the world. Okay? So come on, Indiana Democrats, and come on, Indiana Republicans. Come together, shake some hands, sign some papers, and put it on the voting ballot. Let the people make the decision if they want or not. And let them home grow. Get that on the fucking docket there, people. Okay? Treasury Secretary Yellen gives nod to cannabis banking reform. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen expressed implicit support this week for allowing state legal cannabis companies to access federal banking services as a way to help tax collection. If that is the only reason why you think that's the good reason for tax collection, you have no clue what the fuck people need in their businesses. For tax collection, how about people getting robbed like crazy right now? Millions of dollars, people robbing their stores because they have to carry all this fucking cash all the time. How about thinking of the people and not thinking of the fucking taxes collection, Mrs. Yellen? I read this article and I was pissed. I was like, that's all you care about is tax collection? Go fuck yourself, man. That's such bullshit. Fuck you and your tax collection. God. Oh my gosh, I'm so mad about reading that. It upsets me because they don't care about the people.
I know.
There's people getting robbed like crazy in the Bay Area right now. $15 million worth of cannabis has been robbed in the Bay Area just in the last 2 weeks. And because they have all this cash and they know it. Instead of letting people use their credit cards and using stuff so they don't have to carry all this cash and have to worry about it, people are getting robbed and shot and killed and hurt. And all they care about is tax collection. Oh, man, I don't even get off this shit, man. Ohio Board of Pharmacy to increase purchase limits for medical cannabis programs. This is great news for you, Ohio. All my listeners there, Columbus, Akron, Kent, Cincinnati, Cleveland, everywhere, Dayton, Toledo. This is great news for you because the supply is so weird there and your laws are so weird there where you can only get like a day of supplies because the stupid pharmaceutical board ran it. And they know they screwed up because you have to you get like a supply, a 45-day supply, but it only re-ups after so much. It's so confusing. I'm still confused about reading it, but I'll just go to this one thing. You are going to be able to get 8 ounces of flower over 90 days or 5.3 ounces of higher potency cannabis, the daily allotment of 2.83 grams. That is awesome.
For anybody?
For all medical patients.
Medical.
You're going to be able to get more ounces of flower in over a 90-day period.
So they're going to go from like a prescription, you get a refill every 30 days of this prescribed amount to just have a pillowcase full of it.
Yep. So here, we'll read what it says. The Board of Pharmacy filed a rule on Monday that it would allow people to purchase 9 ounces of dried flower regardless of THC content, eliminating a convoluted system that patients have complained about for years. The board will consider a resolution during the meeting next week and could implement the changes as soon as January 3rd. Hell yeah. This will ultimately simplify the day supply count for dispensary staff and reduce confusion amongst patients about what constitutes a single-day supply. Then it came from spokesman Cameron McNamee, said it in an email. So that is awesome. Awesome news for Ohio. Man, that's great. Hopefully it'll get better, but that's pretty good so far. You want to pay truth or dare or facts?
I like facts.
What facts you got for me?
I got facts about
cannabis. I like truth or dare, but
I have got surprising facts about cannabis.
Tell me about it.
All right. Well, from the Mayflower to the American flag, and even the first internet purchase, cannabis has hid in plain sight. Cannabis in all of its forms is more prevalent and accessible than ever before in this country. Still, it often seems that much of its story is mysteriously unknown. Health studies are still very new, and it sometimes may seem that the plant had no relevant history before the 1900s. As cannabis becomes more prevalent, perhaps it's time to discover the lesser-known facts about this iconic plant to help understand what exactly makes cannabis so interesting and important. Here are 8 fun facts You may not have known about this elusive organism we call weed. Cannabis dates back thousands of years. It is easy to assume cannabis cultivation began in the fairly modern times. However, the first recorded use of cannabis dates back thousands of years before the United States was even an idea. Cannabis was mentioned in the sacred Hindu text known as the Vedas. Estimated to have been produced around 2000 to 1400 BC, woven hemp fibers were even discovered at a burial site in Taiwan that dates back 10,000 years. Dispensaries are becoming more popular than Starbucks and McDonald's. As cannabis becomes legal for recreational use, its retail popularity is skyrocketing. In the last few years, cannabis dispensaries have become more plentiful than Starbucks and even McDonald's in some areas.
Hell yeah.
In Denver and Portland, Oregon, for example, Oregon.
It's Oregon.
I don't know why it's Oregon in my brain.
Someone from Oregon many
Corrected me,
years
probably.
ago corrected me.
Yeah. And you figured out how to say it right. So
For
in
once.
Denver and Portland, Oregon,
There you go.
for example, cannabis retailers outnumber Starbucks by close to double. According to MJ Biz Daily, some states have a cap on the number of dispensaries they allow, but this statistic is certainly telling. Beer and weed are cousins. If you have ever taken a whiff of a particularly hoppy craft beer and thought you smelled weed, your nose wasn't far off. Beer hops, or humulus, it turns out, are in the same family of flowering plants as cannabis. They confirm that humulus and cannabis were very closely related and belonged in a single family, the Cannabinaceae. Yes, that's it. According to popular science, the two plant species may inspire two very different final products, but sometimes the smell is particularly indistinguishable. Sorry, that was a rough one. Weed affects men and women differently. There's another fact. It may sound strange, but recent studies have concluded weed affects women differently than it affects men. The entire THC experience may be different for men and women, from the amount needed to get high to tolerance levels. The main way that cannabis acts differently in women, as opposed to men, is in its interaction with the female production of estrogen. Canvas comes from cannabis. So canvases have been the landing place for some of the most important artful work through time. Historically, canvases were often made with the assistance of cannabis. In fact, cannabis was so important to canvas production that it inspired the name. The word canvas is related to the word cannabis. Historically, canvases were made of hemp, according to vocabulary.com. This is interesting. The birth of e-commerce was a cannabis sale.
I knew that.
There exists great debate when it comes to who exactly started e-commerce. Still, there was a date in the early 1970s that is often regarded as the first internet transaction, and it involved weed. In 1971 or 72, Stanford students using ARPANET accounts at Stanford University's Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, I didn't know that AI was around back in 1971, engaged in a commercial transaction with their counterparts at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, wrote John Markoff in his 2005 novel, What the Dormouse Said, How the 60s Counterculture Shaped the Personal Computer Industry. Stating in the book, before Amazon, before eBay, the seminal act of e-commerce was a drug deal. Cannabis affects your heart. Maybe most of us that have maybe smoked too much sativa strain weed have experienced this, right? Although cannabis is now frequently regarded as safe, it does come with some potential health side effects that are not always known. One potential side effect of cannabis is the added strain on your cardiovascular system. Cannabis can affect your heart in several ways, including raising your heart rate, dilating blood vessels, and making your heart pump harder. So sometimes if you smoke too much, you feel like your heart is just racing.
Oh, yeah?
And then other times you're like, am I even breathing? different ends of the spectrum. Yeah. So that's according to a Harvard Medical School study. Hemp is woven into American history. Hemp has a long history in the United States. Not only did Thomas Jefferson and George Washington both have it on their properties, but the famous Mayflower had sails and ropes made of hemp. The first 2 drafts of the United States Declaration of Independence were written on paper made from hemp, and the first American flag made by Betsy Ross was made from industrial hemp. So there is a real tie to our country's history and the important space industrial hemp played in agriculture in our country, said Representative Jared Polis from Colorado, who authored and amended. So Representative Jared Polis authored the amendment to the Farm Bill, which allows industrial hemp research in states where it is legal. From the Mayflower to the American flag, and even the first internet purchase, cannabis has hid in plain sight. The plant has woven a sometimes hidden but always interesting path over time.
Cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You had a little tongue ties going there for a second,
yeah,
huh?
I did.
Must have been that.
It's the weed.
Must have been that berry white, which I did look up again just for your reference.
Mm-hmm.
It is an indica dominant hybrid, and it's crossed with blueberry, and the hybrid white widow. No Kush.
Oh, no Kush.
No. And I think that's what I talked about last time.
I feel pretty clear from it.
Oh yeah, it's good. We smoked this strain a lot. I mean, I grew a couple ounces of it, and we smoked a lot of it, and we always enjoyed it. So, just a little tidbit of knowledge again.
Thanks.
International news. New report claims medical cannabis industry could make $1.2 billion for the UK, and also suggests the market could create 41,000 jobs. That's huge, UK. Come on, man. Let's go out there from our friends across the pond. Home of Dubai, the United Arab Emirates, ends jail time for travelers with THC. Still don't bring it there, but if you get caught, you won't do jail time, is what they're saying. So we'll see if that happens. Jamaican government launches Good Ganja Sense campaign to debunk cannabis myths. Jamaican officials have launched a campaign that's specifically designed to promote public education around cannabis, an attempt to modernize how residents get information about cannabis. See education. Come on, Vermont. Let's go. The centerpiece of the Good Ganja Sense campaign is a new website that provides resources and articles on cannabis, health impacts, and benefits. Seeks to debunk myths about cannabis and features multimedia education materials like the video that they're showing on their website, which is pretty dope. The Ministry of Health and Wellness officially rolled out the site on Monday. The head of that department, Juliet Colbert Flynn, said the press release that it contains several resources that will certainly stimulate more talk about ganja. This page will give background on the campaign, links to media items, and also connect directly to the website of the National Council of Drug Abuse, she said. It has a contact form, too, so you can get in touch with the Good Ganja team. We are in a digital world where people are finding information for themselves, and the information may be false, or it's very well may be true, depending on where they go. Colbert Flynn said ganja will no longer be underpinned by what has passed down through oral traditions and old tales, but fact-based information. That is how available it is to your fingertips. The video is pretty cool, too, so if you go on their website and you watch it, you'll like it. I think it's really good. As part of the effort to deliver facts on cannabis issues, the new site features a myth-busting section that debunks notions that cannabis use makes people lazy, that lowers sperm count, that leads people to seek out more dangerous drugs, and more. One section focuses on whether cannabis can cause fatal overdoses, citing a Drug Enforcement Administration fact sheet that reports that no cannabis causes overdose death has ever been reported. Thanks, DA, the site says. The experts have spoken. The education effort also features buzz ads that urge people to burn ganja myths and instead go with the science. Science, science, science. Officials discussed the launch of the new website at a press briefing on last Thursday. There's perhaps no country more closely affiliated with cannabis culture than Jamaica, and officials representing the island have worked to build up the reputation. In 2018, for example, a Jamaican lawmaker declared cannabis the country's birthright and called for the expedited research and development of indigenous strains. Former Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture, and Fisheries, Audley Shaw, also said while he was in office in 2019 that the Jamaican government would be putting pressure on the U.S. Congress to approve bipartisan legislation that would shield banks that service state legal cannabis businesses. Despite the strong culture ties between Jamaica and ganja, however, Colbert Flynn says that there's been a knowledge gap on the science of cannabis that left many residents relying on word of mouth for information. We know very well, too, the ills and thrills associated with the internet. Much false health information has been spread far and wide through the technology, but today we can put the right information out into the space, she said. But now with science and technology combined, Jamaica now has the arsenal of resources that puts into context legalization, medical information, and overall evidence-based dialogue that can change the attitudes and behaviors that Jamaicans hold towards ganja. Legalize it. When was the last time you went to a mall?
It's been a while.
Would you go if they sold weed at it?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
I don't know.
Well, tell us about
But there's a lot of people that like going to the mall.
Yeah.
So I've got an article about, are you ready to buy a weed at the mall? Could you imagine? Right? This is actually pretty cool. So it's kind of humorous too. When your first job was at Spencer's Gifts in the local mall and you used to sell weed out back in between shifts, legitimately selling weed at a cannabis showroom in the same mall today feels full circle. That's what one staffer at Joy Reserve, one of Westfield San Francisco Center's newest tenants, told 48 Hills. Tucked between the J. Crew and Bloomingdale's on the second floor of the mall, Joy Reserve isn't a pot shop per se. There's no actual product at the location. Rather, it showcases weed and cannabis-related products via displays and promotional materials. Staffers are on hand to answer questions, and companies have representatives at demo stations. But it's not just educational. There are QR codes on all of the materials should a customer wish to purchase something. They won't walk out of the store with anything, though. Scan the code, and it will be delivered right outside the mall in a safe location. It's not traditional cannabis retailing, but it might just be the wave of the future. Joy Reserve owner Vivian Vu told 48 Hills that the store is providing education to customers who might be too intimidated to walk into a dispensary. Think mom, daughter, legal age of course, and grandma hitting the mall for some new holiday shopping, curiously walking into this new store to see what all the hubbub is about. That's what Vu is hoping for. As a showroom and not a dispensary, we wish to make cannabis accessible to all demographics by providing an experience that is both interactive and educational, she told 48 Hills. Regulations make it difficult for most cannabis retailers in states where recreational use is legal. It takes a lot of time, money, and effort, jumping through a lot of hoops and getting tangled up in red tape to open a dispensary. Not to mention the imbalance of who gets the licenses and who doesn't. Vu's vision, a weed store without actual weed on premise, is a novel way to open up sales to a whole new audience. Across the country, cannabis retailers are taking over storefronts left empty by the pandemic exodus. Where they were once regulated to off-the-beaten-path locations or industrial wastelands, now you can buy weed, CBD gummies, and bongs at shopping centers, malls, and Main Street locations. It's not news that stores themselves are often highly designed, each having their own vibe. There's glossy and chic, sometimes luxury, sometimes a fun house, or akin to an art gallery or Apple store. These aren't places that should be hidden. They deserve high visibility locations. Hiding stores only makes it seem like cannabis is illicit and illegal, which it is not. Recreational is now allowed in 19 states plus Washington, D.C. and Guam. In Union City, California, Salinas-based group Grupo Flor opened a shop in a former Sprint store. It's discreet but stylish. Frosted glass windows, glass counters, marble tiles, a concierge at the door, iPad ordering kiosks. Orders come in bags that look as if they'd come out of Tiffany's. It's not...
Fancy.
It's not kids buying a blunt and sitting stoned on the curb, Bill Schrader, owner of the real estate company that leased the space to Grupo Flor, told NBC News. When you go into dispensaries, you'll be shocked. The store is a cross between an Apple store and Nordstrom's. This is not a dispensary, in my opinion. It's retail. There are still detractors, both in communities and the government, that aren't fully behind pot shops, especially in highly visible locations like the mall. They usually cite reasons like they're not safe because it's a cash-only business. They're selling a drug that's not legal at a federal level, and the innocent children of the community will get their hands on it. Give me a break. That's total bunk, says anyone in the state-regulated cannabis business, from retailers to customers. We don't introduce cannabis to communities. Cannabis is already in all communities, said Gavin Kogan, CEO of Grupo Flor. We introduce regulated, safe, and taxed cannabis into communities. Whether it's a showroom and delivery service like Joy Reserve or a design-minded store next to Nordstrom, this is all just another step toward making cannabis use and retail part of everyday life in every pocket of the country. I think it's cool. I don't know how they're working it out because she implies that she does not have a dispensary license. So I don't know if she's like contracted with a dispensary or whoever's promoting their products there.
Right.
And then you have to go to that dispensary like for a curbside pickup. I don't know how it works, but I do like the idea that there's a lot of people that aren't going to park their car and go into a dispensary because it's uncomfortable. But in this situation, it is your people that may want to be able to see what a dispensary is all about. They may want to learn more about cannabis, but they don't feel comfortable, like I said, pulling up and going in. So if it's in a retail environment that they're already comfortable with and you're not going into, so if their friend sees them, they're not buying weed. They're just in a store learning about it.
Which
I think it's a great idea.
Good concept.
Yeah.
More education.
Yep.
It's great. Come on, Vermont. You got anything else?
No.
No? I'm
Nope.
ready to smoke some more weed, though.
I am too.
And get a snack.
Yeah. We got some good snacks at the store yesterday. We got
Yeah.
some good chocolate.
Yeah, we did.
Let's go smoke some more and eat some chocolate.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Hey, everyone around the world, we love you. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you all. Peace be with you all out there. Be safe, be kind, be human. We love you all. As Paulie always says, smoke smart. Puff, puffing away.
Puff, puff, pass.